So in my previous video, I talked about how to evaluate sources and how to use sources to avoid plagiarism and how to use sources to back up your paper. But in this video, I'm going to talk specifically about APA. APA stands for the American Psychological Association. And if you properly use APA, you can avoid plagiarism. So if you have a direct quote, that is, if you quote the source verbatim, then you need to put quotation marks around the source, and then you stick in the author, the date, and the page number. If you paraphrase or you put the summarize the source, put it in your own words, then you don't need quotation marks, and you just put in the date, the author, and the date. And you put in your APA in-text citations inside the body of your paper. You always cite sources if you're using a medical facts, scientific facts, historical facts, or any kind of numbers, numerical facts, numerical data, such as statistics, or numbers, or dates, or amounts, dollar amounts, population amounts, any kind of numbers. You have to cite the source to give credit to the researcher who did the research. And then if you don't give credit to the researcher, then you're committing plagiarism. So in this video, I'm going to go over the different ways in which you can use APA, or American Psychological Association. APA is used for business and social sciences. So whereas Modern Language Association, MLA, is used for humanities. But since in this class we're going to focus on APA and not MLA. Some of you have done MLA in other schools, but at this school we are going to use APA you're going to be using APA for all of your classes. So that's why we're going to focus on APA. So without further ado, I will share my screen and we're going to talk about how to properly use APA to avoid plagiarism. So why should we use sources? So use sources to inform and support your argument. So you want to provide background information or context. You want to explain terms or concepts. You want to support your claims. You want to lend authority to your argument. You want to anticipate or counter alternative interpretations. So those are the many reasons why we use sources. So citing sources to avoid plagiarism. In a research paper, you will draw on the work of other researchers and writers, and you must document their contributions by citing your sources. Sources are cited for two reasons: to tell readers where your information comes from so that they can assess its reliability, to give credit to the writers from whom you have borrowed words and ideas. You must cite anything you borrow from a source, including direct quotations, statistics, and other specific facts, visuals such as tables, graphs, and diagrams, and any ideas you present in a summary or paraphrase. Borrowing without proper acknowledgement is a form of dishonesty, known as plagiarism. The only exception is common knowledge, information that your reader may know or could easily locate in any number of references. An example of common knowledge is, at least in the United States, is that December 25th is Christmas and December 24th is Christmas Eve. That's common knowledge, so you don't need to cite it. So understand how the APA system works. The American Psychological Association recommends an author-date system of citations. The following is a brief description of how the author-date system works. The source is introduced by a signal phrase that includes the last name of the author, followed by the date and publication in parentheses. The material being cited is followed by a page number in parentheses. At the end of the paper, an alphabetized list of references gives complete publication information for the source. So an in-text citation is a citation that occurs inside the body of your paper. Here's an example. As researchers Yanofsky and Yanofsky, 2002, so that would be over here, as researchers Yanofsky and Yanofsky, 2002 have explained, obesity was once considered either a moral failing or evidence of underlying psychopathology, page 592. So you put in the name of the author, the date, and the page number. That's an Intext citation, APA style. Then after the last page of your paper, then you would put in the reference citation. Notice how this is in left hanging indent, where here you have it left justified, and you indent the second line, which is the opposite of what you do in a paragraph paper. And that only occurs on the last page of your paper. So this basic, and so here you would have the author name, the date, the name, the article name, which is italicized, and then you have, and this is a print, obviously, and then you have the article name, the publication name, the edition of the publication, and then the page numbers. So this basic APA format varies for different types of sources. I'm not going to go over all the different ones, but at the end of this book, or at the end of this chapter on APA, they will give you examples on all the different kinds of APA reference citations. So you could take a look for yourself how you can use what type of source you're using, and then what type of reference citation fits that source. So avoid plagiarism when quoting and summarizing and paraphrasing sources. In a research paper, you draw on the work of other writers, and you must document their contributions by citing your sources. When you acknowledge your sources, you avoid plagiarism, which is a serious academic offense. So in general, these three acts are considered plagiarism: failure to cite quotations and borrowing ideas and not giving the other person credit. Number two, failing to enclose borrowed language in quotation marks. Failing to put summaries and paraphrases in and citing them. And also failure to cite ChatGPT. You also have to cite ChatGPT. So citing quotations and borrowed ideas. To indicate you are using a source's exact phrases or sentences, you must enclose them in quotation marks unless they have been set off by indenting. So basically when you cite verbatim a direct quote, then you have to have quotation marks to indicate that you are using the other person's exact words. Then you put in parentheses the author, the date, and the page number. So putting summaries, and here you have according to the Henry J. Family Foundation, 2004, experts have pointed to a range of important potential contributors to the rise in childhood obesity that are unrelated to media. This is plagiarism because it does not have quotation marks. Yes. So when you forget to put in even if you put in your author, your date, and the page number, and you use the exact words from some source, but you don't put in quotation marks, that is still plagiarism. So here, to make it correct, when you use the exact words, you have to have a beginning quotation mark here and an ending quotation mark here in order to avoid Turnitin. Otherwise, Turnitin will see it, flag it as plagiarism, and you're going to have a high plagiarism score, and you might get an F for your paper. So always, if you want to avoid the F, then put in those quotation marks. Putting summaries, and when you use summaries and paraphrases, you don't need a quotation mark, but you still need to put in author and the date. You don't need any page numbers. Summaries and paraphrases are written in your own words. A summary condenses information from a source. A paraphrase uses roughly the same number of words as the original source to convey information. When you summarize or paraphrase, it is not enough to name the source. you must relate the source's meaning using your own language. Half copying the author's, and if you copy and half copy the other person's stuff, that's still plagiarism, okay? And that's not proper, summarization. You got to use your own words. So how do you integrate sources into your paper? I teach students that they should use pie structure, and that when you integrate sources into your paper, use a signal phrase, then you write the in-text citation, and then when you put it into your paragraph, you only use one in-text citation per paragraph so that you don't overwhelm the reader. And so I always tell students, you have the main point from the thesis, then you have your in-text citation, then you write 5 sentences, that's explanation of that in-text citation. So P, main point, I, in-text citation, E, explanation of that in-text citation, pie structure. And that would be your entire body paragraph, and then you don't need, so that's how you would integrate your source into your body paragraph. So your research paper draws on and borrows from the work of others, so to help you support your ideas. So as you conduct research, you gather ideas from other people. So this section will teach you how to integrate. Summarize. When you summarize a source, you express another writer's ideas in your own words, condensing that the author's key points and using fewer words than the author. Even though a summary is in your own words, the original idea remains the intellectual property of the author. That's why you must include a citation. When do you use a summary? When a passage is too long. And remember, you only have 7 sentences in a paragraph, so you want each of your in-text citations to be less than 3 lines. And so when you want to state the source's main idea simply and briefly in your own words, that's when you summarize. When you paraphrase, you express an author's idea in your own words using approximately the same number of words and details as in the source. Even though the words are your own, the original idea is still the author's intellectual property. So that's why you have to cite the source. Use quotations effectively. When you quote a source, you borrow some of the author's exact ideas. You got to enclose them in quotation marks. In quotation marks show your reader that both the idea and the words belong to the other author. When to use quotations? When language is especially vivid or expressive, when exact wording is needed for technical accuracy, when it is important to let the debaters of an issue explain their positions in their own words, when the words of an authority lends weight to an argument, when you want to discuss the language of a source. Although it is tempting to insert many quotations in your paper, limit your use of quotations, I tell students, to one in-text quotation of less than 3 lines per paragraph. So that's about it. And if you do have a quotation that's longer than 3 lines, that's known as a block quotation. And I'm just introducing this as an option, but I usually discourage my students from using block quotations because it interrupts the flow of the paper. But if you have something that's really important that needs to be quoted, you can use a block quotation. So a block quotation in this book is called long quotation. So when you quote 40 or more words, in other words, more than 3 lines, set off the quotation by indenting it 1/2 inch from the left margin. So here you have the regular margin. This is 1/2 inch in the normal right margin, and do not single space the quotation. Long quotations should be introduced by an informative sentence and followed by a colon. Quotation marks are unnecessary because the indented format tells readers that the passage is taken word per word from the source. So if you have a really long direct quote and you want to use a block quotation, be my guest, but I discourage it. And this is how you would do it. In other words, when you have something that's longer than 3 lines. Use signal phrases to integrate sources. What is a signal phrase? Whenever you include a paraphrase, summary, or direct quotation, prepare your readers with introductory words called a signal phrase. A signal phrase usually names the author of the source, gives the publication year in parentheses, and often provides some context. It is generally acceptable in APA style to call authors by their last names only. I've seen this. Several students would say, and Susan says this, and Susan says that. That's way too conversational. You don't know that author personally, so why are you calling that author Susan? Always use the last name to show respect. So you would say Smith 2025 or 2023 states. That's a signal phrase. So when you say according to Dr. Smith 2023, that's a signal phrase because you're signaling to the reader that you're about to start an in-text citation. Hence the expression signal phrases. And so when you use a signal phrase, it lends authority and it marks boundaries in your paper and it prepares the reader for an in-text citation. And so you can use in-text citations with summaries or direct quotes, either way. So here's some examples of in-text citations. So here you have, in the words of Carmona, as Jorinsky has noted, Hopkins, 2004, pointed out that, claimed, so you would say, obesity is a big problem, claimed Cruiser, 2003. Obesity is a big problem, wrote Durenword in the United States. So you can even split it up here. Or researchers states, or in the words of Carmona, obesity is a terrible problem in the United States. And then instead of saying states, that's also really boring. You can change up the verbs in your signal phrases. Admitted, agreed, argued, asserted, believed, claimed, compared, confirmed, contended, declared, denied, emphasized, insisted, noted, observed, pointed out, reasoned, refuted, rejected, reported, responded, suggested, thought, and wrote. So you can also Google signal phrases as well as signal phrase verbs, and then you can get yourself a even longer word list. And this is also a great way to learn more vocabulary. And so integrating statistics and other facts. So when you are citing a statistic or another specific fact, a signal phrase is often not necessary. In most cases, readers will understand that the citation refers to the statistic, not the whole paragraph. In purely financial terms, the drugs cost more than $3 a day on average. There is nothing wrong, however, with using a signal phrase to introduce a statistic or another fact. Putting source material in context. Readers should not have to guess why source material appears in your paper. A signal phrase can help you make the connection between your own ideas and those of another writer by clarifying how the source will contribute to your paper. If you use another writer's words, you must explain how they relate to your writing. Quotations don't speak for themselves. You must support them by creating a context for readers. Embed each quotation between sentences of your own. Introduce the quotation with the signal phrase and follow it up with interpretive comments and link the quotation to your own idea. So this is when I tell people, students, the pie structure. P is the main point from the thesis statement. I stands for the in-text citation. E, explanation in 5 sentences of that in-text citation in your own words. And that way it gives context to the reader of why you're using that in-text citation in your paper. So I'm going to make sure I covered everything. I kind of wrote it all down. So in-text citation versus reference citation. Okay, so there are many different kinds of in-text citations. In-text citations is what occurs inside your paper. And so APA in-text citations provides the author's last name and the year of publication, usually before the cited material, and a page number in parentheses directly after the cited material. APA requires the use of the past tense or present perfect tense in signal phrases introducing cited material. So you would say Smith reported, or Smith 2012 has argued. And here, this is how your in-text citation should look. Cruiser 2003 noted that despite growing numbers of overweight Americans, many healthcare providers still remain either in ignorance or outright denial about the health danger to the poor and the young. So here you have the author, the date, and the page number. And now you have a lot of examples. This is what I was talking about, how the end part, now here you have reference citations. Are these reference citations? No. So these are all different ways in which you can write your in-text citation inside the body of your paragraph. So here, and if the different sources are missing a date, missing an author, or if it has two or more authors, these are all different ways in which you can write your, in other words, if there's no date, you write N dot D dot, and in parentheses. And if there are no page numbers, you can then use a paragraph number. So that's really common if you have a web source. Then at the end, so these are all of this, and personal communication. If you interview someone, then you would write F. Johnson, personal communication, October 20th, 2013. Okay, so that's different than all the others that has just the author, the date, and the page number. Then at the end of your paper, after the last page, you're going to put your list of references. And remember, your reference citations needs to match your in-text citations, or else you're doing something wrong. Okay? And so general guidelines for listing authors. So this happens at the end. You need to alphabetize your references list. And then with two or more authors, you need to use this ampersand. Okay? And you need to write the last name first, then the first name. And if the author's name is missing, then you could use the website name instead of the author's name. Or in case of ChatGPT, you put in the author's place, you put in ChatGPT, then the date, then you put in the language model of ChatGPT, and then you put in, and the date, and then you put in ChatGPT's web address. That's how you would put a reference citation for AI. And you always italicize. So this goes through the 5 different parts of an entire reference citation. You put in your author name, then you put in the title of your article name in italicized, then you put in the publication name, which usually is the website name, and you put in the volume, the issue, and the page number of that journal. That actually makes a lot more sense when people used to go to a physical library, and you actually had to physically look through, Journal 1, Volume A. Nope, not that one. Volume B, not this one. Volume C. I remember having to take out the different volumes. Then I got to look at the different issues. Then inside the issues, I had to find the page number. So all of that makes sense back in the day when we had physical libraries, and you had to actually use Dewey numbers to look for, going up and down the stairs to look for the source. Then at the very end, last but not least, you put in the web address, and that's it. A very common mistake among my students is that you put in only the web address at the end of your forum, and that's not correct. When you write your reference citation, even if it's for a forum post, you have to have the author name, the date, the article name, publication name, date you retrieved website, then you put your web address. Oh, these days I can say the reference citation in my sleep. You know how many times I have to tell students, your reference citation is missing parts. Your reference citation is missing parts. Your reference citation is over and over again. So if I have a lot of students, let's say I have 25 students in a class, then 25 times I would be writing, your reference citation is missing parts. So that's why I want you to remember these 2 pages, so I don't have to keep writing, your reference citation is missing parts. And so always remember that your reference citation has to have the author's name, the date, the title, place of publication, volume, issue, and page number, and then the web address comes last. Here's how it looks like, okay? If you have single, this is the easiest one, and it's printed. In the old days, that was so easy. Now the most common one, everybody uses website address. So I'll get to that in a second. So here you have the author name, the date, then the article name, then the date of publication or the place of publication or your publication name, publisher, and then that's it. Okay? So that is the simplest one. So you need to at least know this one. Okay? And now you have to know, and here, when you have different editors, okay, website, voila, that's what everybody uses, the web. So here you have the author's name, the date, the article name, and then you have the journal name, and then you have, voila, then you have the web address. And so when I tell people that they're missing parts, typically they're missing all of this. They only give me this as if that's enough, and then they forget all the rest of it. So even when you write in your forums, you need to put in the entire reference citation. And also I see people missing their in-text citations. So you need to have both your in-text citations when you cite anything with numbers. Because otherwise, if you leave that out and you hand it into the Turnitin and you get a high, a 90%, 70% or whatever plagiarism score, you get an automatic F for the paper. So you always want to make sure that you have correctly cite your sources to avoid getting that F. And I believe, yeah, so here are more examples, okay? Citations at a glance. So this goes after the last page of your paper. Okay, so this is so many different examples of all the different kinds of sources that you can come across. And that's why they give you many different examples in the, let's see, I think I'm done. That's why they give you so many different examples in your Rules for Writers book, and that you can look up these examples in order if you're having trouble doing your APA in-text citations. So if you have any questions about APA and all things APA, you can always email me. There's also things like APA auto-generator, like EasyBib or Citation Machine. Those are great auto APA generators, and then you just fill in the blanks, press submit, and then it automates your reference citation. It will also automate your in-text citation. So if you're not sure how to use I remember many years ago when I first started teaching, I didn't know, and I wasn't that sure about the latest APA. I actually used EasyBib, and I used EasyBib Auto APA Generator. Until now, of course, I know APA, like, and MLA for that matter, in my sleep because of how many papers I have to grade all the time and how many students just give me a web address. And I have to tell them your reference citation or your in-text citation is missing part. Some people are just missing their in-text citations altogether. So in order to avoid plagiarism, you have to properly cite your sources. So if you have any questions about APA, feel free to email me anytime.